Hello there, welcome back to Genesis Models, and this is part 3 of our 1 in 48 scale red arrows made by Airfix. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start to look at filling, sanding, scribing and all that kind of stuff. The first thing I'm going to kind of want to talk about is, I might have touched it in part 2, but is the times when we should be filling and sanding and all that kind of stuff. Because if we remember, we used Tamiya extra thin cement, which is not gluing it together, it's melting the two pieces of plastic and then it welds and merges, and basically the two pieces of plastic become one. Now the problem is with that is what you'll find is where this join is, it's going to be slightly wet and softer than the rest of the plastic. You can get away with sanding 4 hours after, but really, I mean, it doesn't properly go rock hard till potentially about 2 days after gluing it. And when you're coming along with your pea cutter and you're going across the join, what you end up doing is you dig into the join and make a bit of a dent, a bit of a hole. Now this has had probably about a week to dry, so I haven't got that problem, but if you want to bear that in mind, so that when you do come along and scribe, you're not digging in, making holes which you then got to fill and sand and re-scribe again and all that kind of stuff. Next thing to talk about is the different kind of fillers and putties and all this kind of stuff that are out there. I mainly use what we see here, which is Mr. Surfacer. We got like a 500, 1000, 1200 grade. These are good for kind of like little seam lines, because basically you come along with a paintbrush and you just simply paint it on where the seam line is, and this will take care of, you know, the little seam lines. So maybe you've filled in with another kind of putty, you've sanded it away and you've got a bit of a seam line left maybe, and you just want to take care of that little bit of a seam line. You can fill that in. You can fill minor little gaps with this kind of stuff, but this is kind of like a finishing off your seam lines kind of a filler. The next is we have this green stuff by MMD. And we've also got the white putty. Not really much difference in the two, to be honest. This one, the white putty, does seem to sand a bit better, and the green stuff putty seems to fill a bit better. This kind of stuff, I use this for like big gaps, kind of where it's gonna, where you need to really fill something. But the problem is with this stuff is you've got a big gap, say, you fill it in, and it can get quite messy, because how you apply it, if I can just get one out, is you apply it with something like this tool here, and when you apply it, it does get everywhere, which is kind of messy, as well as it doesn't properly dry for hours, and you can literally come back 3 days later after like filling it in, sanding it, and it's properly dried, so then it's shrunk, and then you've got your seam line back again. So bit of a pain. You have to be kind of careful with these, and you might have to kind of fill, sand, wait maybe a day or two, and then potentially have to fill and sand again. So kind of be careful when using this stuff, because or even actually the Mr. Surfacer or even Vallejo's putty, because they will shrink back, and they could shrink back to the point where you have to refill again, and the last thing you want is your whole model's all sprayed up and you end up getting all your seam lines coming back. The next thing I like to use is CA glues. Now this stuff is also good for big gaps and that kind of stuff, and it will fill it, and this stuff with a bit of kicker can dry in seconds, and that is it. There is no shrinkage, you know. Once that is on, it is on, and your seam line's gone. But with CA glue, as you can imagine, you've really got to get in there with some coarse sanders and really sand at it to get the super glue sanded back and get your seam line all nice. So again, I mean, you've got advantages and disadvantages, and then there's this Vallejo putty, plastic putty, which I do quite like this one because it's not really good for sanding. I find that it does fill big gaps, small gaps. It's got this lovely, nice applicator here, which can really get into nice places and really apply it where you want it. But it doesn't seem to sand well. I find that if you come along with a coarse sanding stick, that it seems to almost peel away rather than sand away. So I find that you have to really kind of come down to maybe a fine sanding stick, which it sands a bit better with a finer sanding stick, but as you can imagine, you're going to be sanding a lot more with this stuff because you have to come down to like a fine sanding stick. But the advantage to this stuff is it's really cool. You can get like cotton wool buds, some sort of moisture. You can use water, you can use acrylic thinners, and you can apply it into, you know, any kind of a gap, and then you can wipe it away straight after and basically clean around where you've applied it, and basically you just wipe it away so that you leave the plastic putty in the gap you want to fill. The only thing is with this kind of technique is you're not going for a seamless finish. You're talking about gaps that maybe you still want it to be recessed. You know, probably the best example I'll show you, I like to use this for, is something like a canopy, because with canopies you do kind of want to use like PVA glues to glue a canopy on, and the last thing you want to do is come along with, you know, all sorts of putties and then sand away to get, you know, whatever gaps you might have with canopies. But with this stuff, you can nicely apply it in the gaps and then quickly wipe it away, nice and harmless, and you can fill nice gaps around the canopy, and it's really, really nice technique. Just kind of remember to spray your canopy black first before you apply this, because you'll end up with like it will show through the canopy. So we've had a nice talk now about all the different kind of fillers that I use and a bit of the advantages and disadvantages, so that you can kind of make up your mind upon what to use. So now we're going to get on with some sanding, some filling. Now if you've got something like a Hasegawa kit, or any kit that has a really nice fit, you can actually see that you've got already a nice kind of fit seam line kind of thing, and you could probably get away with just coming along with a sanding sticks without any filling and just sand away and polish it out, and you can really end up with a nice seamless finish with some kind of kits like Hasegawa and stuff. So you don't always have to fill. In this case, I mean, it is Airfix. We have got some seams here, so we need to sort these out, and we've got some actually kind of big little dips. So I'm kind of thinking for like the kind of bigger kind of cracks we've got on here, to use a bit of the green stuff and then paint along with it with Mr. Surfacer, to fill in this seam line that goes all the way down the bottom of the fuselage section. However, what I do like to do first is, we do have our recessed panels all the way along the bottom of our fuselage section. What I like to do is I'll I like to give it a bit of a scribe before I do any sanding, because if we come along and we sand or fill this and sand it, we're going to lose all our recessed panel lines, and then you've got to kind of put them in again and use templates and all this kind of stuff. But if you come along and maybe just make your recessed panel lines that bit bigger, well, so shall we say a bit deeper, that when you come along and fill and sand, you're gonna still have your recessed panel lines still there, and then you can tidy it up, because it's a lot easier to come along, even freehand, like I'm doing now, without any kind of templates or anything, and nicely put a deeper recessed panel line in, while you've still got the recessed panel lines here. As soon as you've sanded them out, that's it. You've got to make up the recessed panel lines again using templates, and it just makes the scribing a lot harder. Whereas, as I say, once we've sanded this, if you've got some recessed panel line left still, you can come along freehand again and just make it all nice and tidy. Saves you a lot of time, and I know a lot of people kind of don't really like to do scribing, so I find this makes it easier, because if you can do it freehand and nicely follow an already there recessed panel line, you'll be a lot good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go along here and just freehand rescribe all this and just make all the recesses that bit deeper, so that we're all good to fill, sand, and then come in with another little touch up of a rescribe, and this should be all good. So I'm going to cut away now, and I'm going to crack on with getting them a bit deeper. Okay, so I've just rescribed now the bottom of the fuselage, just to make it a bit deeper, so we can fill, sand and scribe, and hopefully still have some recess panel lines still here after doing all that. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to start by adding some of our green putty. Now, I do like to get a bit of cellulose thinners and just have a bit of a drop on the end of our little tool here, and it just helps it not dry up so quickly, because this stuff can really dry up quite quickly and makes it a bit harder to apply. And I'm just going to pick out the areas that are a bit nastier than everywhere else. There's just one or two, just to kind of fill in those areas that the Mr. Surfacer isn't going to fill as good as this green stuff. Okay, right, and that does that just nicely. As you can see, I've just picked out those little bits and they're nicely filled in now. Just put the tops on these. Right, for this I'm going to use the 500 grade. Give it a bit of a shake first. And I'll just use an old paintbrush, any old paintbrush, and what we're going to do, we're just going to brush it on like you would paint, and brush it all the way along the seam line, just to get that all filled in. You might need to come along and do maybe 2 or 3 coats of this, but it's nice and easy and it does the job nicely, and this stuff does sand away really nice as well. Just go all the way to the end, and then we had this little piece here that didn't quite fit. I think it was in part 2. We're just going to put a bit around this as well, just to kind of fill in the gaps a bit here. But we don't want this seamless, because this is our air brake, so it opens and closes, so it's not a seamless fit here. But this Mr. Surfacer isn't gonna fill this to a seamless finish. It's still gonna leave a bit of a recess, just to kind of show that it does open and close. So you only probably want to put maybe one coat of this on just here, as we don't want it seamless. And then going back up to the top, because this stuff does dry pretty quick, you can then add a quick another coat. And basically you just keep doing this until, because when you paint this on, what you'll see is it'll kind of dip in a bit, which kind of shows the seam line, and you want to keep applying it until that seam line goes away, and then you can sand. Okay, right, a bit more on the back here. Okay, so I don't know how well you could see that. I don't know how well you can see that, but we've basically just filled that all the way along our seam line. Now, I'm going to leave this to dry for maybe half an hour, because this is only like a little seam line, so you don't really need to leave this for hours and hours and hours to dry. It's when you've got the big gaps where you need to leave it a really long time to dry to hopefully, you know, not have any kind of shrinkage. But we should be all right with these little kind of seam lines where this joins our two fuselage sections together. So I'm going to let this dry, cut away, come back to, oh, first off, when you do use a paintbrush with Mr. Surfacer, really nice way to keep your paintbrush nice and clean, I find, is you dip it in the cellulose thinners and you can nicely wipe your paintbrush clean, just so it's all good, nice and clean for when you use it again. Because if you leave this stuff to dry on here, it's just going to go rock hard and your paintbrush is going to end up very ruined very quickly. But a bit of cellulose thinners and you're all good. So I'm going to cut away and I'm going to get back to you with some sanding. Right then, so now this has had time to dry. Our Mr. Surface and Mr. Putties had time to dry, and you know, we've got our recessed panel lines a bit deeper so it can survive the sanding. Now I got these sanding sticks from Models R Go. They're quite nice. You've got like coarse, medium and fine. You get a pack of 3. These 3, I think they're about £4.50 or something. And then you also can get a pack of these sponge sanding sticks, which are like a fine sanding stick. You get these in a pack, about £4.50 again. And you also get this nice little polishing sanding stick as well, which is like really fine. You can use this to actually polish up canopies and all that kind of stuff. So that's what I'm going to be using. Although you do also get the same kind of grades of sanding sticks, but as a skinny stick, so that you can get in hard to reach places. And they also do it in the sponges as well, which is cool. So what you're going to do is we're going to come in with a nice coarse sanding stick, and we're going to just lightly give this a bit of a sand, and we're not going mad and really digging into it, because we're a coarse sanding stick. We just want to take off the top layer of whatever filler we've got on here. We don't really want to start really sanding into the actual plastic, just the top layer of filler. Just getting that sanded, and just at the back here. What I could do is I can just do this top bit to save a bit of time, and then you can turn it over and it's a little bit less coarse. So because it's a little less coarse, we can like dig in a bit more and be a bit more heavier, and kind of start kind of sanding into the plastic a bit, really trying to get this seam line seamless. I'm just sanding this top bit here. Right, that's nice and easy. A little bit more here. You can also come at different angles at it to get it right. Right, that's starting to look good, so we can come in now with a even finer sanding stick, working our way through the grades so that our plastic at the end of this will all be back to smooth again, because the coarse sanding stick that we started off first is going to put nasty sanding scratches into it, and that's not what we want. But by going through these the different grades, we get it back to being nice and smooth, and then we come in with a final, well, we come in with this, a nice fine sanding stick, but it's sponge. And what the sponge does is it will it'll basically, because what we've done here, we've kind of sanded this a bit flat, and there is a bit of an oval shape to it, but with the sponge it will kind of sand the ovalness back into it a bit more, which is good, so we don't end up having like flat bits where we've sanded away at our seam lines, which can look quite bad in itself. Ooh, careful. Alright, just sanding this out. Okay, now that's looking and feel, you can actually feel how it's nice and smooth, you know, and you can use your nail a bit, and actually if you kind of move your nail across the seam line, you can actually just about feel how nice and seamless that has come now. You can finish it off. I use a bit of an old, this is like the polishing sanding stick that you can use for canopies and stuff. You can come along with, say, an old one, and just give it a bit more of a polish, just to make that all nice and really, really nice and smooth, and really get this all really good. You see that shines up a little bit more now. Right, now you've done this, right, although you can kind of maneuver this in the light to kind of see if you've got any seam lines, you can't really tell fully whether you've got all your seam lines or not. So there is one little thing we can do, is a bit of black, any old paintbrush will do, and what we're going to do is we're just going to paint on a bit of black where the seam line is. Alright, and what this will do is, if there is any seams left to be filled or sanded, this black is going to bring it all out for us to see, and this stuff should dry pretty quick. Not only that, because you start off with a really coarse sanding stick, this can leave scratches, and what this black's going to do is it will bring out any scratches you might have made through sanding as well. So we are going to nicely know what work is going to be left on this seam line here. And I don't know how well you can tell. A bit of paper. But you can see how by coming along and doing that bit of scribing first, you can still see, hopefully, that we do have recessed panel lines still there, where if we didn't come along and give that a little bit of a scribe first, which was nice and easy freehand while there was still recessed panel lines there, if we didn't do that, we probably would have sanded all that recessed panel lines out, and we wouldn't have what we've got now. Now I'm looking at this and I can see that I've got enough of a recessed panel line to come and go freehand and not have to worry about slipping and stuff, because there is a nice recessed panel line here for me to go freehand and just get that nicely out. Now this has dried, we can bring a bit of a light in and you can look and see what the seam line's like, and that there is done. I can see now by painting the black on that there is no seam line. It is seamless. I'm not seeing any scratches from the sanding, so this part here is all good, ready for spraying now, and you can just sand off our the black paint that we've just done, right? And by sanding it off, you also get another indication if you've got any scratches, because if I sanded this off and there were scratches, I would see like there is a bit there, a little bit of a bit of black. That is where the black is, like the black paint has gone into a couple of little scratches here, and that's kind of showing me that we've got a bit of a scratch going on here. So if I sand at this with a nice sponge sanding stick, nice and fine, what you do is you sand out that bit of a scratch that the black paint went into and showed you, and now that's gone and we're all good. Oh, hold on, we've got a bit more up here. Okay. There we go. So that is a nice bit of basic filling and sanding, and we've nicely got this seamless, and we've even got a bit of a nice bit of recessed panel lines to be able to scribe freehand. But to go into a bit more depth on scribing, you've got these scribing tools. You get like about 3 of these in a pack. Off the top of my head, they were under about £10, and you can use it as a bit of a ruler really, and you can kind of butt it up against where you want to scribe, and then with your P cutter just nice and lightly scribe across and get your recessed panel line. You've also got all these little kind of circles and squares of different sizes, and there's all different shapes on about 3 of these, which are really good to make stuff. Now, a few kind of little tips is when you're kind of scribing, try and remember that don't dig in and really try and kind of scribe the depth you want in one kind of stroke. You want to just not apply any pressure. You just want to let the weight of the scribing to the P cutter do the work, and just keep going over it. Even if you go over it about 10 times, you know, it doesn't matter. Just lightly let the weight of the scriber just nicely scribe the way you to the depth you want it at, and there we go, all nicely scribed. You can to kind of help, you can get some like Tamiya masking tape if you want, and tape it onto our little template here, and then you can simply just line it up where you want, and then have your Tamiya tape hold it in position. But you know, this way of doing it is, I mean, for a beginner, it's, you know, it's good to kind of get your scribing nice, but you're probably going to find that you're going to want to move along later on and not do this, because as you can tell, I mean, you know, you've took all this time to mass this up into position the way you want it to get your recessed panel line like I've just done there. But eventually, I mean, scribing is one of these things where you've kind of just got to accept you're not going to come along and I've just showed you, and then you're going to go off and you're scribing like you've scribed for years or something. It really does take a bit of experience to plain and simply just learn and get the experience, get the feel of the thing, you know, depending upon, you know, have you got like an oval bit to do, like say, you know, we've got some bits on here which we kind of need to bend this around and then you scribe it around, or, you know, all sorts of kind of angles and bumps and stuff to get around. You'll get the kind of gist of it as you kind of practice. the way I kind of learned is I just took a model that was raised panel lines and I just re-scribed the entire thing. Yeah, admittedly it wasn't like brilliant, but by the end of it I'd learned so much by just re-scribing an entire model that, you know, I ended up kind of nicely competent after doing that one model. You know, so that's how I learned, and then over time you just get better and better. And to be honest with you, I just come along now and I'm just doing it freehand, which hopefully you can get to that stage. But as I say, don't expect to be able to just come along and just do freehand after one model. It will take some experience, but definitely I'd recommend the Tamiya P cutter for doing scribing, and these templates, this is by Dream Model. I'm pretty sure you can get it from Models I'll Go. I have tried out other P cutters before. I've got the Trumpeter one here. The Trumpeter one I don't like. It doesn't give a nice recessed panel line, but it is good for getting into places like a 90-degree angle, because you can really get nicely to a 90-degree angle right butted up, whereas this one, because of the shape of the P cutter, you just can't quite get in there. You know, so I like to have the Trumpeter one just to get into those kind of angles, but mainly I'll always try and use the Tamiya one. I do think this one's a really nice one. Apart from that, I think I've nicely covered a couple of basics. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do this all the way around the model. I'm going to fill in, I'm going to sand away all around this fuselage section, and I've already actually done a bit of filling with Mr. Surfacer on the wings and stuff, and I'm going to get these also sanded out to get these all nice and seamless, as well as our air intakes on here. And when I've done that, we can probably maybe do a bit of touching up, because you can also I do like to use this tool, a micro saw, to kind of basically saw in a recessed panel line around here, but we'll talk more about that next. And then we can actually start getting this together and start making it look like a red arrow. So I'll be back in a second. Okay, so I've gone round the whole of this model now, both the fuselage section, the wing section, our air intakes here, and I've got them all nice, seamless, filled, and I've re-scribed any areas that need re-scribing. So now we know we're all good with these sections here. We're going to start gluing them together. Now what I've done is we've got a bit of a poor fit with our fuselage section and our wing section. So I've had to come along and I need to use just a bit of an elastic band just to hold in place our wing section to our fuselage. Alright, and even though it's sort of nicely in place now, we still do have a bit of a gap, so we're going to have to do some filling with this once it's dried in place, and then we can kind of play around with getting it filled. There we go. So I'm just going to give this a nice bit of glue now, just to start the gluing process, because we can't glue where the elastic band is, because what you'll find is this extra fin will kind of go into the elastic band, and then you'll end up with like elastic band marks where you don't want them. You'll have to sand them out, so you want to stay clear of the elastic bands. But hopefully what's going to happen is, where the elastic band isn't, we can glue, and then when it's dried and in place, we can then come along, remove the elastic bands, and then glue where the elastic bands were, sorry, so as it's all then glued all round. But this is going to need a bit of filler because it does have a bit of a nasty gap this side, but it's no big deal. I'm going to use Vallejo plastic putty, which we can just glue in and wipe away with a cotton wool bud, which is a good opportunity to show you how that works. So that's going to hopefully hold that into place until we can remove the elastic bands, which does mean we can't get our intakes on. Now the intakes, they're also a poor fit, and where it joins isn't actually, if you look at reference photos, they're not actually a recess line here, so we've got to smooth this out and make it all nice and seamless as well. So that's going to be a bit tricky to get in there and sand, but you know, sometimes you just have to deal with that kind of stuff. So while this glues into place and dries, I'm going to cut away and we're going to get back and do some more gluing. Right then, so we're giving this a bit of time to dry, and it is nicely holding in position now without the aid of elastic bands. I have put a bit of glue just where the elastic bands were, just to speed things up. I need a little bit more here. Okay, so we need to get these air intakes on, which I've sanded and made all nice and smooth, and as you can probably see, I don't know how well you can see that, we do have a nasty kind of gap here. I have done a bit of dry fitting and a bit of sanding and stuff to try and make it fit better, but this is just one of these cases where you've just got a nasty gap and you have to accept that you're going to have to do some filling, some sanding. So we're just going to apply some glue to this to get this in position. And we're going to want that to dry up nicely before we come along with some filler. Now with this one, it's going to be a bit of a pain because you want this nice and smooth and no seam line, but it's in a bit of a tricky position, so you're going to have to kind of grin and bear with trying to sand away with some skinny sticks and trying to get the right angles to get in there and sand it. A bit of a shame, but that's sometimes what you got to do. And to be honest with you, I think we could do with putting an elastic band on this as well. So I'm going to get the other one on and get an elastic band on. I might put a little dollop here this time. Okay. Just getting some more glue on this. There we go. Okay, now just to basically squeeze this in position a bit better, I'm going to put an elastic band around this, and hopefully what this will do is squeeze these two intakes together enough to hopefully put us in a position where we haven't got to do as much filling and sanding, fingers crossed, because sometimes the two pieces of plastic will melt, and if you apply enough pressure they can sort of kind of really merge together nicely, kind of giving you it basically kind of fills itself a bit, fingers crossed, or at least makes it better than it is. Although this might be a bit too tight, I'm actually pushing it out of position, so we might not be able to do that now. Tell you what, we'll get a smaller one and we won't go round it as much. Let's see if that works, not being so tight. Okay. Right, that's a little bit better now, not having so much pressure around it that it kind of moves it out of position, but it gives it just a nice bit of pressure to squeeze it onto the model a bit better. But sadly this is going to need a fair bit of filling and then sanding, sadly. So the next thing I wanted to quickly show you as well while this is gluing is a way of rescribing recess lines around a wing. I've already done this side because basically we've sanded away whatever recesses that's along here, and we want to put them back in to make this look good. And what I find is a razor saw and just holding it very nicely, bring it up to the line, and then you just pull it back nicely and it will nicely just saw out a recess line on our wing. There we go. And I do like to use my nail just to kind of go through it and sort of tidy up the recess line, because when you saw it, you can kind of saw in little bits off, so you just want to get them out of the way, and that's good. And we can do this again, just to show you again. We're just doing it nice and slowly. I'm using my fingers here, and I'm using them to basically steady our saw, micro saw, and the model, and I'm just bringing it around. Nice, slow, precise strokes, and just nicely cut our recess panel line around our wing. Right, I'll do the others off camera just to not bore you. Right then, we've got all this glue together now, and it's had a nice bit of time to dry. What we're going to do now is start doing some filling. As I mentioned, we was going to use a Vallejo plastic putty, and what you do is you want a cotton wool bud. Just get one of these out. A little bit of moisture. I'm just going to use water, and what you simply do is nicely apply this stuff all the way along our seam here. Nice, quick, easy, bit of moisture, and then we use our cotton wool bud and we just wipe away the excess, right? And then we can get a bit, use the other end of the cotton wool bud and maybe just tidy up around where our stuff might have gone. And it literally is as easy as that. You probably can't pick this up on camera, but basically what was, you know, a little bit of a gap, I mean, we're not talking a big gap. If it was a big gap, we'd probably have to use green putty, but for a nice little gap that just needed a bit of attention, nicely applied, nicely wiped away, and there we go, we're all sorted that side. And we'll do the same this side just to show you again. You put it, apply it to the gap all the way along. Yeah, we'll get another cotton wool bud, bit of water, moisture. You can use acrylic thinners if you want, and you just wipe it away. There we go. And then maybe use the other side of the cotton wool bud, wipe again. I'm wiping this on my hand here. I mean, you don't have to if you don't want to, but it just gets away the big blobs of the stuff so you don't get wiping it all back on. But that there now is sealed up that little bit of a minor gap. Nice, quick and easy. We're not coming along with a sanding stick, because I can tell you this, sanding something like that is going to be a right pain trying to get in there, because it's a 90-degree angle. You just can't quite get in right in the corner of that 90-degree angle. So, you know, for something like this, I do like to use filling techniques that don't require sanding. So we've got them all nicely filled. There's another bit here that I want to keep as a recessed panel line, but it needs that bit of attention just to get filled. And I'm doing the same here, filling that in, cotton wool bud again, going over it, wiping away the excess. And we've got a little bit of a gap still there, so I'm going to apply a bit again, and then I'm going to rub over it again. Right, and we're all, you know, we've given that bit of attention to not make it such a big gap. It's now looking like a bit of a nice recessed panel line now. And if you're not happy, you can always apply more and keep doing that until you've got what you want. Not only that, when we come to the end, we're going to spray a bit of black on just to kind of like see how it's going to look when it's sprayed and stuff, so we can see if it needs a bit more attention, but that's just fine for now. But then I've got a little bit more here that needs a bit more attention, and that side. So I'm just going to wipe this away again. There we go. And this side. You do have to be, you know, fairly quick at wiping it away. If you leave it a bit too long, it starts to dry, and when you come to wipe it away, it doesn't quite wipe away as easily. So you do want to apply and wipe. But now, put these in the bin. We need to use some green putty, because around this air intake is a pretty horrible fit, and considering it's supposed to be a perfect seam line, we need to really give this some effort. Right, so again, a bit of cellulose thinners just to help with this not drying up so quickly. I'm just going to squeeze a bit out, and I'm just going to apply this now nicely where our gap is. Okay. Now, as I say, this really has a chance of getting some shrinkage, so we do kind of want to leave this at least overnight, which would be nice. So, you know, you can really kind of think about your model and really think where you need to put this green stuff. Maybe do, you know, a load of other stuff that you want to get done, and then say do this green stuff last, so then you can leave it overnight at least. Ideally, you know, 2 or 3 days, so that you know you're not going to get this nasty shrinkage, and then you can come back to it, sand it down, and you're all good. I'm going to leave this now to dry overnight, and then I'm kind of thinking this is the end of part 3 now, considering how much time I've spent on this. So in part 4, we're going to be giving this a good sanding, getting this all nice and smooth, and trying to get in there with, you know, trying to get around this kind of, you know, this shape, because as I say, it's going to be tricky getting in with the sanding stick and going round and all this kind of stuff. Get that nicely tidied up, and then really I think there might be a bit of scribing, just kind of basically scribing out some of this filler out of the recessed panel lines, and then our basic, the basic foundations of this model is then done, to be honest, because looking at the instructions, after this stage, once you've got it all, you know, at a professional level of filled, sanded, reset all your panel lines and everything all sorted, it is just prepping up your landing gear, putting on the canopy, you know, and we're going to be ready for spraying. So hopefully in part 4 we're going to be looking at doing spraying and start doing that kind of stuff and glossing up and doing stuff like what to do to prep up for spraying and all that stuff. So just remember, visit and register at genesismodels.co.uk, and you can, you know, get everything there, and then you can look at like all the part 1, part 2, as well as what all the other members have done and what other work I'm working on and all that kind of stuff. So apart from that, until part 4, I hope you've enjoyed, and I will see you again.